Bars and barbecues. Yeah. Bars and barbecues. Let's go. I enjoy bars and barbecues.
New album, Start Anew. Shad, welcome back to Library Rap Hip Hop Interviews with Tim Eineke. I greatly appreciate you taking the time to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having me back on, man.
So I want to start with I want to talk about the album, but first I want to just quickly ask you about the 4-part documentary series you did, the Hip Hop Evolution. It's great in many ways, but it's also great because it's kind of what journalism should be, especially you as a hip hop artist, and then you're able to do that role as a true journalist, which was wonderful to see. But I have to ask, out of all the experience of the documentary, all the interviews you did, what did you learn about yourself as an artist and as a writer, as an album creator, that you didn't know, and kind of like your takeaways from that?
Wow. Yeah, that's an interesting question. I learned, what did I learn? Well, there was one thing I heard Q-Tip say that helped frame some things for me as an artist. It just kind of helped me understand my own evolution as an artist. So he was talking about the Tribe albums. And he was saying that he saw them as like a series of paintings. Let's say you're trying to paint the bowl of fruit that everybody paints. You know what I mean? And you take your first couple attempts are, rendering that bowl of fruit well, you know what I mean, accurately and in detail and in vivid color. And then, maybe the second or third time you're starting to put your own spin on this whole bowl of fruit painting genre, And then maybe the fourth time you're kind of looking at the bowl of fruit as like a concept and you're abstracting that and so he saw the Tribe albums in that way. And that helped me understand what I've been doing over the years as well. Just that language, just that, metaphor. So that was a thing that, helped me understand my own work as an artist. And then just speaking with a number of people. So I'm thinking of KRS-One, for example. And just seeing how unique of a human being he is. Like, right. He's just a high energy human being. And I noticed a lot of the people we spoke to had a level of energy to them. There's like a common thread, common denominator. It was that. It was like so many of these great artists, especially that have longevity, they have an internal engine that's just unusual, Right. And so I just kind of stored that in my mind, just thinking about, because as artists we think about how can we stay inspired, how can we keep our skills sharp, but we don't necessarily just think about that engine, just the pure fire and energy and how important that actually is. So that was another thing I kind of stored away and kept in mind. But it was such a rich experience, Tim. Like we could probably talk about it forever, but right. Yeah, but those are some things that I took away, that helped me understand and inspire my own work.
Right, that's all. I mean, I imagine also, as we all get older, right? It's just like there's you're trying to figure out that drive or what inspires you, and like what you could continue to write about as an older artist, and how do you continue to keep that flame going, right? Yeah. I mean, or how you not look at stuff you've written like, well, I've already talked about this. What the hell am I? What else am I going to talk about?
Yeah, totally. And exactly. So seeing those artists stay passionate, and part of it is natural, right? Like a guy like KRS-One, part of it is his natural disposition and his natural charisma and those gifts that he has. But another part of it I realized, Tim, is the era that they're from. So one thing KRS noted, a lot of other artists would note, is coming from an era of hip-hop where it was all about the live experience and touching an audience and feeling that energy and that electricity, that creates a different kind of beast. Right. in terms of as a performer and as an artist, that creates a different animal than someone who grows up like kids grow up now, recording solitary in their room on their laptop, and their whole experience of music is a lot more internal, it's a lot more solitary, it's a lot more mediated by screens and the internet, and that is different than if what raised you is the electricity of live performance and the
Right.
of live performance, you know. So part of it is natural. Part of it is the gifts of. Part of it is your natural gifts you're born with. Part of it is the gifts of the era that you come from.
Mm.
So it made me learn that and made me sort of lean into that. You know, I'm from a particular era too, and there's gifts that come with that. And so as I age as an artist, I got to lean into that. Like for me, I think of lyricism as that.
Right.
Like I come from an era where the music that was out when I was 16, 17 was Andre 3000 and Black Thought and Jay-Z and Eminem and Common and basically many of the greatest lyricists we've ever seen in
Right.
hip-hop. So my bar in my brain that was set was this. And so I'm always trying to read. I can't help it. I can't calibrate any differently. You know what I mean? So
Right.
my era, that's because of my era, you know?
And speaking of it, this is perfect. I want to turn to the new album, Start Anew. I think one of you have many great works. I think this is one of your best piece of works.
Thank you.
And you just talked about challenges and lyrics, and I was thinking about starting with the intro track, but then I heard Slanted, the second track, and there is so much going on with that beat. I mean, so many slow down, speed up. And what got me was that I found myself not distracted by the beat. Your lyrics still popped, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So as a writer, how do you approach that where you hear this incredible beat and you hear all these, stop, slow down, speed up, and you say, well, okay, I'm going to use that to my advantage. I'm not going to get distracted by it as an artist, and I'm not going to let my fans get distracted by it as they listen. Can you just talk about that approach to writing?
Yeah. So, okay, there's a couple different ways to think about it. With that song, so on one hand, there's all these stops and starts. There's all these changes, right? Which I love. It's a challenge, I think, for producers. How do you keep things dynamic? Because so often what a song is based on in hip hop is a 4-bar loop, maybe an 8-bar loop. But how do you break out of that and keep things interesting? So just a real talented producer that cracked that code on that beat for sure. It's dynamic, but still feels cohesive. But while there's lots of changes happening, it's still pretty minimal. It's a lot of drums and bass.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And some other layers. So the changes could be distracting, but it's not this thing where it's too dense in terms of layers. You know what I mean? There's not a million instruments going on at the same time and your ears trying to focus on melodies and harmonies and stuff. So that left some room. And then the way I thought about it was how can I take advantage of these changes to kind of create some drama in the song, but then also make sure I'm always feeding back to the central meaning and the chorus. You know what I mean? Just this idea of slanted and making sure we're always kind of aiming back there and landing back there. But it's a fun challenge. It kind of reminds me of, again, playing live.
Mm-hmm.
And, say, looping beats and switching up the instrumental, and you gotta ride it, which I love. I love that feeling.
You spit every album. I'm trying to die is what you spit on happiness. Trying to die and happiness. Definitely two contradictions, right? What did you mean by these lyrics? I mean, obviously there's a lot of I think death conversation within this album and life. But that, out of all the lyrics, when I was listening to Happiness, and then out of nowhere that comes, you start out, I'm like, holy, what the fuck? I'm like, okay, what's going on here? So what did you mean by these lyrics? What's behind this?
Yeah, you hit on something important, because I did that in a song called Happiness. And that's something important because the idea I'm getting at is happiness is on the other side a lot of times of letting go. You know what I mean? Of just letting go of that grudge, letting go of that resentfulness or that or a feeling of regret or something. It's like, and so I use the term death to be provocative. What I mean by death is loss, losing something, letting go of something. There's a lyric by a Canadian artist named Feist that I always liked. She says, "Teenage hopes with tears in their eyes, too scared to own up to one little lie." Like so often in our lives, there's one little fiction or story we tell about ourselves that we cling to, and if we could just let go of that, we'd be happier, we'd be lighter, we'd be happier, we'd accept who we are, we'd accept other people. So that's what I'm getting at with that verse, man. I'm saying, yeah, every album I'm trying to die. The goal is ego death every time that I rhyme, trying to kill all self, any pride that's inside, destroy the places my reputation's trying to hide. Just letting go, shedding any sense of who I am in my own mind, of shedding any sense of who I think the audience is expecting me to be, just sort of like letting that go or trying my best to, freedom, I think, that comes from that, and the happiness that
comes. When we think about, so let me start the question. So sunshine after the rain is usually how we think of events of happiness, right? When I was thinking about this question, I could only think of Scarface and Mary Ben Early doing "Sunshine After the Rain," and that song. And then, but the next track after "Happiness" is called "Rain," so you don't think the opposite. You don't think especially you don't think the opposite because "Rain" is such a track about life. Yeah. It's about what water does and what's the importance of water in our life.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the order of these tracks? And talk about why did you choose to line them up this way?
Yeah. I always think about that. The intro for me is basically laying out the themes. It's like the intro is just saying quite plainly what I'm trying to say with this album. I start with the lyric, "It's hard to let go when you don't know what to hold next. When you got to trust a lot because you control less. Wonder if that's what got us in this whole mess." It's just the human control, even though it's just not how it works.
Right.
And then slanted, I wanted to come with something, exciting and different and a bit disorienting, like you were saying, but also speaking to some of the challenges that come from this mindset, that come from greed and clinging to control and not letting things go through their natural evolution and all of that. And then into some more optimistic songs, but still have layers to them. Right. Happiness is positive. But I'm saying every album I'm trying to die,
Right.
And Rain also is upbeat and it's positive. But I'm talking about rain. I'm talking about the choruses don't need to rain like a royal. We just need rain on the soil. We need to nourish. We need to nurture and serve the world instead of try to, again, control it. Sorry. And then it continues, on from there. And Look Part 1 and Look Part 2 those are important ones to have back to back. Both of them are about looking at reality, but and just kind of the importance of that. But
before I ask you about bars and barbecue, what writing purposes? When did you come up with the concept for this album? And is it something that happens like after the fact, or is it something that you go and you have a drawing board? This is going to happen. This.
For this one, I had the concept before. I was like, I think this is what I want to say. Sorry, I think this is what I want to say. Feels like continuation of a conversation I kind of have been having for the last couple albums and exploration I've been on. And so this is what I'm trying to do. I think it's a big enough umbrella to hold a lot of different songs that come at things from different angles and have different feelings to them. And so I started with that overarching theme. that kind of felt right, meaningful, and it felt like motivating for me as well. Like this is gonna give me the energy to get out of bed and keep chipping away at these songs. Yeah.
I think I when Bars and Barbecues dropped, I tweeted out these lyrics, and I will try to repeat them, and hopefully I don't butcher them too well. I want to do it, and there's two different verses, and I want to kind of connect the two. So the first bit, matter of fact, I'm more Jason Bourne, born to kill, but the source of all life. Give me my force of will, that I'm needing a quarter mil for my mortgage bill, just in case you want to support him. It's important still. And then at the end of the track, you spit, the bars of food, that's what we artists do. Stew on the thoughts so the bars are never hard to chew. And I want to connect these two lyrics because to me, you're telling the audience, your lyrics, your art, this is nutrition for the audience, right? This is a service. This is what artists do. And it makes you happy to provide that, right? But at the same time, you're saying, but we as artists need you to survive because we have families and we have ourselves and we have, So one, am I connecting these two art lyrics correctly? And two, I admit I did a terrible job spitting the lyrics, but I thought it was important because lyrics are important, right? So I wanted to highlight these two and see that it's just these two connections that are happening. Can you kind of talk about these two verses?
Yeah, for sure. This is part of the fun for me of writing. I can start with just like simple. I started that song with just a simple idea of playing with bars and barbecues and just this rhyme thing and this wordplay, basically. But then out of that comes things, comes real things, comes things from my own life and just what it is to be an artist. And I sing for my supper, man. I'm a working artist. I can't skate right off into the sunset.
Right.
I work. I work, like you said, to feed for myself while I'm trying to feed other people. You know what I mean? In a different sense. So yeah, I wanted to put that in the song just because it's where the wordplay landed, but it's real. It's self-deprecating in my own kind of style, but it's also real, and it's real stakes in this thing that I'm talking about in the album, which is like life and death. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, man, like I'm really out here. Like I'm having fun here with these words, but yeah, I'm out here, man. I'm like everybody else trying to survive. And then the second verse, really talking about, the bars are food. That's what we artists do. Stew on the thoughts of the bars. It's never hard to chew. It's our joy. As much as it's hard work, there's nothing wrong with hard work. It's still our joy to do this, to provide this, to give the best that we can to people, through music. And if I can go on a bit of a tangent, it just calls to mind AI and all the stuff with AI, which my objection to it is not even from the paying my mortgage bills standpoint. It's really from the standpoint of like, yes, making music is hard work, but there's not a whole lot else to do.
Right.
This is what we love. Like, life on Earth is not easy. Right. There's not a lot of enjoyable things, and if you take them away, it's like, okay, but then what are we gonna do? Like, what's the point? Right. What I mean?
Right.
Okay,
Right.
Save this time, so now what am I gonna do? So, anyways, like that's what that verse is about. It's hard work. We stew on the thoughts. You're cooking that barbecue, man. It's like it takes a long time. You know what I mean? But it's also our joy.
And then the argument about AI from some people are like, well, it's going to give you more time to be creative. And then you're like, but then you're making AI tools to be creative. So
exactly.
what are you talking about?
Exactly. So again, what is the point? Not from a self-preservation work standpoint, from a simple life enjoyment standpoint. Like, what are we doing?
Was there ever a moment, thinking about Bars and Barbecue and thinking about how it's especially it's hard out there, right, to make a living in this art form. There's the few the few Jay-Z's out there and whatever, and now you have YouTubers, so you have to do that, right? But was there ever a moment where you're like, maybe I should move on, or maybe this is not it for me anymore, or I just, I love it and I'm going to do this as a maybe like a labor of love type thing, but not going to be able to do it to provide, A,
Yeah.
B, and C.
Yeah. You know what? For me, it's always an evolving thing. It's always a not evolving thing. It's always a situation that I'm gonna evaluate. I have two kids, so fortunately, um, I'm able to provide for my family. But if that ever were not the case, um, I come from honest, hardworking people, and I have no qualms about being an honest, hardworking person in another domain.
Mm-hmm.
That's if that's what was called for. The way I think about it is always the longer I get to do this, the less time I have to do something else. You know
Right,
what I mean?
right.
If I have to get a different kind of job for 10 years, 5 years, it's like great. Like, so that's one way I think about it. And but another thing I've noticed, Tim, that's like really cool is even as things have gotten more and more challenging in terms of the industry, music industry consolidating in this new way into 3, 4 streaming services and 1 or 2 live music businesses.
Right.
There's also this thing that's quietly happening where bands are supporting in this really grassroots way that reminds me of 20 years ago when I started.
Mm.
And I would go up to shows with my box of and people would be glad to pay at a pot. Like I put out my first album, I did a re-release on vinyl, and I was floored with the response. That's straight money in my pocket.
Right.
And I'm hearing so many stories from artists in the same way, with people subscribing to their YouTube or their Substack, with people selling out their vinyl release or supporting on Bandcamp, and they're kind of going, I don't even know if I'm going to put this on Spotify. I don't need to.
Right. Right.
So there's these things that are quietly happening because at the end of the day, there's a couple things that will always stay true, and one is that there's no history of human cultures without music. We love music. We gather together. We make sense of our lives through music. And 2, people are willing to support.
Right.
They really are. They really love to be around it, and they love to support it, and they want it in their lives, and they feel good about it. And so those 2 things will always kind of continue to be there, and the industry will evolve. But I do believe those things will continue.
And there's also, sorry.
Yeah, that's it.
There's also, there's also longevity, right? It's like there's I have 2 kids as well, and they listen to whatever YouTuber is rapping, and it's funny because we both come at, I'm 46, so we both have come at this like time where hip hop wasn't the popular genre, right? But then you kind of knew that as it evolved, as it got more popular, you have artists out there that if it wasn't rap music, they would be doing something, they would be singing whatever genre was popular, right? Because they're talented in that way that they could write a pop hit, so to say, right?
Yeah.
And I think about like the artists my kids listen to, and all I can think is like, they're not going to be it's like we have nostalgia in a way, and like these kids, I feel these YouTubers are not going to be around it's going to be a different person, but it's not going to be it's going to be one hit wonders more so, and then kind of,
Yep.
they're not going to have conversations with these guys or girls 20 years, 30 years later.
Yeah, totally. One thought that I had, this is a very rough thought, but I had it the other week. I was thinking about music. I was thinking about like kind of big picture. And I was thinking, I think groove creates genre. Like hip hop comes from the groove of certain drummers and rhythm sections. Groove creates genres, and melodies create hits, and lyrics create fame. I think when you capture something in words. There's no shortcut to this. You got to really live it, put your heart into it, and apply your mind to it. But when you sum up something to someone that they touches their heart and helps them understand themselves and their lives, helps them in some way, they love you forever.
Mm-hmm.
Really do. I know that because there's artists that have done that for me. That, 20 years on from hearing that line, I'm like, I love that person.
Mm-hmm.
There was a way for me to support them, I would support them. There's a way for me to kind of stand up in their presence at a show. Like, I'd be glad to do that a couple times,
Right.
And so I say that all to your point. Some of these artists that pop up and they resonate moment because they're participating or whatever it is. It's no guarantee they're going to be sticking around, because what helps you stick around is when you really touch me.
Right.
There's no shortcut to that. There's no shortcut to that.
Right. Right. And I think that it reminds me of my favorite lyric by DMX is, "I just say what's in my heart," and they call it a style. And you're like, yeah, I mean, we artists that stick around, the fan hears their heart, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, and I think, I don't want to be like, don't want my kids to think I'm a grouchy old man, but it's just like, you hear the music they listen to and you're like, well, they're writing, sure, they seem to have fun, but I don't see them sticking around I mean, if someone told them like country music is the latest craze right now, they would gladly switch themselves to whatever music it is.
Yeah, and it's that commitment. Who's to know? Like, I listened to everything too as a kid. Whatever came on the radio, I'd listen to it, and some of it I thought was fun, and some of it, whatever, and some of it I didn't really care for. But then some of it inspired the artist that I am today.
Right. Oh, I understand.
You know what I mean? Some of it really affected my life and touched me.
Right.
So it's like there's different levels. Those ones that really affected me hard, it's like I still speak those artists' names. Look out for different levels. There's other I like songs and art, but there's levels to this.
Yeah, no, there is. All right, so I want to come back just quickly to the album. It's the last track on the album, "Fear of Death." Great name, heavy. I think heavy name for a track. It's the final track of the album. The beat, amazing beat, but simple in a way. I mean, there's complications, obviously, that this beat maker, the producer, did, but it's one of those beats that are you could kind of tune out, but it's powerful enough to hear. Mm-hmm. And it brings more to the song, but at the same time, you could tune it out and just listen to your lyrics. When you heard this track and you were started to write, what went through your mind? What were you, and then why did you choose this as the final track of the album?
Yeah, so I heard that. This is a producer I've worked with a lot, Rick Knows. He's just one of the best in my view, because he has his own feel. Truly unique to him, but it's like it's beautiful. It's like really melodic and beautiful, but then also really soft focus, kind of distorted and strange, which is my favorite thing, in combination, when you have that something beautiful, but it's scuffed up and it's textured and it's unique to the person. So I heard the track and I was like, I really want to do something with this, but it's challenging because it is pretty spare, and also it's slow. Mm-hmm. It was slow, and so I just decided to lean into that, not speed up my flow at any point, but instead have to really focus on every single word I'm saying, because it's going to be front and center in literally slow motion. I'm getting words out, so it was a nice creative challenge for me in that way. And then it also, just the mood of it, it felt like, well, this has got to be either the opener or the closer. Mm-hmm. So let me try to make it the closer. Let me try to bookend, like I was saying earlier, that the intro really lays everything out that I'm trying to say. and then this to me bookends it as well, kind of reiterating it, but adding some more layers and more poetry, and hopefully more poignancy, to the themes that I'm trying to talk about throughout the album. So that was the goal with that one. It was challenging to get to a point where I felt okay about it, but I think I got it there.
Yes, and this is my final question. Is there for this album in particular, is there a lyric that either it's your holy shit, I can't believe I wrote that lyric, or a lyric that kind of sums up your goal or mission for this album?
Yeah. So there's a song called we talked about it a bit, Happiness,
Mhm.
where I talk about in the first verse. I say, what do I say? I say, still, I always got to gamble my career. I got to lead by example far as handling the fear. But over the years, it do take a toll. It makes you want to skip taking the risks and take control. But I don't know. I find comfort in the obstacles. Only care to try it if it's something that's impossible. Like forgiveness, imagination, love, if the myth is old and the subject's exhaustible. Like, there's something in that I really like, that I feel like is on theme of just like stepping into what's challenging and what is hard and what is unfamiliar, because that's where the richness of life is. There's something there. That's like a low key lyric, but it's like, in terms of connecting to the album and what I'm trying to say, I do like that one.
Hmm.
And the last song, Fear of Death, has some moments I like because they're more poetic in a certain sense than I'm used to doing. Like, I think my style normally is a little bit more conversational, and then there's a certain focus on being interested. Whereas on that song, there's some moments that are poetic. They're not really conversational. They're more like poetry, like writing poetry, and less intricate in the hip hop way of the rhyme schemes and stuff. So there's a moment, for example, I say, now is the time to take risks and practice patience. Break down and build to make a better basis. We run from love or chase it, but rarely just embrace it. So like a line like that is something I don't often lean into that kind of poetry and say a thing like that. Or in the first verse I say, there's morning, then morning, a light goes on. Nothing done was all right or so wrong. Like that kind of lyricism is not something I often do.
Right.
To me, it's a little bit of a different style that I'll call more poetic. So I'm glad for those moments. It's a bit different.
On a personal, when I first heard when Bars and Barbecue dropped, first just the Bars and Barbecue part, like those words, hit hard. But then after listening to that record like 5,000 times, and then waiting for the album to drop, and maybe it's an older thing, I don't know, but I found myself like I found listening to each track that your lyrics popped more than before. I don't know, and I don't know, and it was definitely from the Bars and Barbecue, and listening, reading those two verses that I said to you, and how much those stood out to me, that I knew there was going to be a lot, and there is usually lyricism with you, but like a lot more lyricism and a lot more kind of maybe quote unquote Easter eggs that I had to try to listen for, and I'm still going to go back and try to listen and try to figure anything out. But it was definitely it really the Bars and Barbecue was like the starter for me.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, one thing I did try to do, we've touched on it a little bit, was keep the beats more spare, so that. Because that's my style, is to be pretty dense as lyricist. I can't really get away from that. So, Bars and Barbecue is pretty simple, pretty stripped. I didn't augment that track, much. I just kind of kept it, or at all, really. And a few of the songs on the album are like that, where it's like I'm not gonna add any. I'm gonna resist my instinct to add stuff, music.
Right.
And so that the lyrics can have more space. and to just be what they are. So I appreciate.
New album, Start Anew. And thank you, as always, for taking the time to do this. I greatly appreciate,
Well,
anytime any new music drops, I'll definitely love to keep interviewing about it.
dope, man. I appreciate it. Thank
Thanks, man. Thanks, man.
Slanted. White Jesus, white Prius. Preaching nice, decent life, live, laugh, and swipe visas. No such thing as a king.